You are now tuning into the Vibe with Don Vito show. Today we have an exclusive guest coming on today. He goes by the name of attorney Sandford Rubenstein. He's coming on the show to, talk about, a lot of the things that happened in the last couple months with the police brutality and the protesting and, stuff in that nature. I've known this man for quite a while, and he's a good guy. And I just felt it was the need and it was the time for him to come on the show and to express his views and his opinions and also his expertise about, policing and protesting and, and also the community itself, from a legal standpoint. So, I want y'all to tune in. We're doing something different today. When he comes on, you're going to see what we're doing. And like I said, attorney Sandford Rubenstein is a very well-known attorney. Just to name a few, he did Abner, Louima case, Sean Bell, a list of others. He's going to get into it. I don't want to, talk about it right now. We'll wait till he comes on the show. Hey, Sharita, what's up? How you feeling? What's good? Thanks for tuning in early. And, back to what I was saying, this guy's he's everywhere. Anything happening with anything in the community as far as police brutality or stuff that's unfair to, guess people in the hood, pretty much, or minorities and stuff like that. He's the one who comes and stands tall, and he's a little guy, but he got a big heart and he cares about people. So I just was at a rally with him the other day at the State Building, and he went over there, and he, people saw him and they were just happy to see him because they know that someone cares and he's strong in the community. So when he speaks, people listen. So I asked him to come on the show, and he said he would love to, just so he can, talk to the community and, give his advice and also his experience, what's been going on, not just now, but for years. He got, he's got millions and millions of dollars for people who, had a lot of problems with police brutality and just, situations, period, as far as, with assaults and violence and all kind of stuff. He's the man, for that type of stuff. What's up, Jay? How you? Meditation Miss, how you doing? What's good? How's everything? Yes, like I said, Sandford Rubenstein is coming on, and this should be a great show. It's something different from what I normally do. But, when I get my guests to come on the show, I pick them a certain type of way because it's a certain format that I want to deliver to the community. And it's time for him to come on right now. Things look like they're cooling off, but they're really not. They just calmed down a little bit. So he's going to come on the show, and we're going to go through a little history of Sandford Rubenstein's journey as an attorney, and all the wonderful things that he's done in the community and a lot of people that he helped in the community all over. So in the meantime, in between time, I want y'all to just be a little patient, and he should be on momentarily. I spoke to him a little while ago, and there you go, he's about to pull up. My man Sandford Rubenstein, I see you, buddy. Hit that request button, and we're gonna start the show. We wave back at him. Okay, here we go. Mr. Sandford Rubenstein, ladies and gentlemen. We're connected. Hey. Good to see you.
Downtown Brooklyn, here I am, ready to answer any questions you have for your audience.
All right, but before we start, let's let the audience know who you are and, how you started your journey into being a great attorney.
Well, you're very kind to call me a great attorney, but I'm just a simple Brooklyn lawyer. Actually, I started in a storefront in Bedford-Stuyvesant at Throop and Myrtle Avenues. I had been a law student at night at law school and got a job as a law clerk doing everything. When I graduated from law school, I became a partner in the storefront law firm with two older gentlemen who had been there for many, many years. And I never got to have lunch with my father the day he came to get sworn into the bar because I had to go pick a jury in a major criminal case. sale of heroin. And the only one more surprised than me that my client was acquitted was my client. So I did good right out of the box. And I went on from there to do a number of criminal cases. And then I really started focusing on civil work, getting damages for victims in all sorts of terrible accidents, medical malpractice, as well as some police brutality. And of course, when I was asked to represent Abner Louima, the Haitian immigrant who was tortured at the 70 precinct here in Brooklyn, I got some notoriety on a national level. And from there, it's been a amazing opportunity to try to get change. And today, with the marches and demonstrations against police brutality all over the world, this has been a cause that has been covered by newspapers, magazines, television stations in over 107 countries. Because when Floyd was killed by the police officer, the chokehold, it wasn't just a simple incident that occurred in Minneapolis, Minnesota. It became a worldwide cause, a worldwide movement against police brutality. And I'm very proud to have been representing all these years victims of police brutality.
Yes. So I've been in your office a couple of times, and you have all over everywhere. You have like a lot of plaques all over your walls, man, from all your achievements and your accomplishments. Let's talk about that.
Well, you know, if I had a camera here, which I don't, I'd go through the various.
You can see some right there. They can see your background.
We have one room. Well, I think if we could take this away from here and start, can we use the camera to take pictures? If we can start focusing, for example, this is what we call a civil rights room. I'm gonna.
Yeah. You can walk around a little bit.
And you'll see some of the. I guess I got to go backwards, right? I'll just flip it like this, right? Flip it here. Okay.
There you go.
Here. No, that's not flipping. 1 second. I got it.
All right.
Here, for example, is a march that we did in Connecticut. This is before the killing of Floyd, Justice for Mubarak Suleiman. Mubarak Suleiman was a victim killed by the police. And when you look at the video, it's almost like he was assassinated by a state trooper in Connecticut. This is a march that I'm leading with Reverend Kevin McCall, an activist here from New York. We went up there to Connecticut. I was asked to represent the victim along with my team of Connecticut lawyers. And we now have a case pending against the Connecticut municipality and the state of Connecticut for the killing of Mubarak Suleiman, and the criminal aspect of that case, namely the investigation of whether or not it was a crime for the trooper to just mow him down, is now under investigation. So that was a case that created a lot of interest in Connecticut, and in which we're looking to get justice for the victim and his family. He's passed because they killed him, but for his family. Now, as we go on, we'll see some other blow-ups here. This is one in which we were demonstrating in Harlem for justice for vendors. This was a case in which I represented some vendors. Here's a state senator to my left. I think there's some glare there. That's Brian Benjamin, New York State Senator. There's Reverend McCall again. And this is trying to get justice for vendors. And we represent some of the vendors who were, unfortunately, injured by police officers in the manner in which they made arrests in the subways. I had someone selling candy bars, for example, and he was injured during a brutal arrest. So this is an example of publicly demonstrating what it is that we need to get changed with regard to. And then, of course, we have some other photos as we scan across here. This is a march with Black Lives Matter Hawk Newsom. That's a victim, Wally Camara, looking for justice for him. This is a photograph of Reverend Sharpton and myself at the memorial for the girls killed at the church in Birmingham. There's the memorial right there. And then we have the Caribbean Day Parade, in which I was the Grand Marshal last year. And you'll see in that the governor, the Attorney General, Congressman Meeks, Reverend Sharpton, and there I am as the Grand Marshal of the Caribbean Day Parade. I do a lot of work for members of the Caribbean community. And then we have some other blow-ups here. This is the issue of NYPD don't kill the mentally ill. There's Hawk Newsom. We did a march against NYPD not taking the proper steps in dealing with the mentally ill. Someone dials 911 for help, and they end up, police come instead of people who could really help. And victims have gotten killed. We represent 4 different victims in 4 different cases. Here's an example. Should be alive. Kin suit enslave disabled man who attacked cops. Another one. Attorney General passes on a taser slay case, but victims can pursue it. Another one. Stop the killings. Push Attorney General probes of cops and the mentally ill. So we've been working very hard in a lot of areas to try to get justice. Now, this is an old photograph, probably historic. There's Reverend Sharpton, a bit larger than he was back in the day. There's Abner, I represented, the late Johnny Cochran, as well as Reverend Nicholas and his dad, Reverend Nicholas. That was about 20 years ago. Very historic photo. And then we have, a lot of cases that I've done, beaten by cop, other marches, Black Lives Greater New York, Enough is Enough, talking about police brutality. So there's a whole history here. And if I'm going to scan now some of the photos, the whole history of my involvement in fighting police brutality. Demonstrations in cases in which I didn't represent victims, in which I was an activist. The killing of Deborah Dana here. It's a demonstration I helped lead. So I do play a role as an activist as well as this is a Garner case. There's the wife of Eric Garner. We're leading a demonstration that was in Staten Island. This goes back to Diallo. This was a demonstration in Times Square in the killing of Diallo. Where's Diallo's father? Way back when. So there's a whole history of my involvement in the movement against police brutality. And this room has a lot of photographs from a lot of the work that I've done. Now let's see, you gotta put that back.
Okay. So you've done a lot of work in the community, and it seems like every time a major a crisis comes along, people give you that call. When you come, people they just feel good when you're around. Like help is on the way. Like like you're the voice of the people.
Well, we're fighting for justice, and I have been called in a magazine article written about me, where they were kind enough to put me on the cover, the voice of the voiceless. And I'm very proud of that, because we have to shine a light on wrongdoing. We have to shine a light on injustice. And by shining a light on it, perhaps we can get change. And that's what this whole movement against police brutality is aiming for. Try to end police brutality. We had some statutes passed in the state legislature, signed them. They're all helpful, doing requiring video to be posted quickly from police cams. But at the end of the day, until the mentality of the police is changed and they don't believe that they can get away with assaults and killing victims, until that happens, we're never going to end the police brutality. And I believe the only way that's going to happen if those police officers who commit criminal acts are held accountable criminally and go to jail. Now, we've seen recently a very interesting phenomenon, and I think all the publicity that happened with the killing of George Floyd really made a difference. What do you have? We recently have a case in New York, I'm not representing the victim, in which a chokehold was used. This was a few days ago. And as one officer was choking this victim, another officer pulled him off. Now, I happen to believe that one of the reasons that a good officer did that was because of what happened in the George Floyd case, in which all the officers have been indicted and charged with crimes. And I think when fear of being in a situation, if one officer is doing wrong, choking, when that's against the statute recently signed by the governor, a new criminal law, other police officers are there, they realize they could be held criminally liable as well. They're going to stop it. And that's what happened here. So I think we've got a man's life today because the officer intervened, pulled the bad officer, so to speak, off the victim and stopped him from choking him for a long period of time. So that victim lived, he was hospitalized, and he's out of the hospital now. So I think we've already seen benefits of this movement, this worldwide movement against police brutality.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Rubenstein. So I was at a rally with you at the State Building the other day.
Yep, Harlem State Office.
And these young kids were speaking so well. How do you feel about the youth of today?
Well, what I said at that rally was that it's so heartwarming to see the young people, and not just black young people, it's white young people, it's Asian young people, it's young people of all colors forming a movement, but out there picking up the torch to fight and stop police brutality. And it was very encouraging to see the youth of the city out there at the Harlem office building, one of the many, many demonstrations and marches that have been going on in this city, all over the country, all over the world. It amazes me sometimes when I see all the countries in which police brutality is a problem and is now being demonstrated against to try to end it.
Right. So, if you give me a second, I want to show a couple of your clips from that's on your YouTube with a lot of the things that you've done in the community. And this is one of them, and I want you to just walk me through it. What's that one about? Can you see it?
No. Need to get some fix here. Instead of seeing you, I could just.
You better see it right here.
Can't see it.
All right, so let me talk about it then.
What?
So it's Sandford Rubenstein addressing police brutality.
Why don't you play the clip for the viewers?
Well, the viewers can see. I just played the clip right now, right? But for some reason you can't see it.
All right,
I'm gonna walk up. I'm gonna go up. I'm gonna walk up through it right quick. So where was the one about you in Connecticut police brutality? What was up with that protest right there?
I think that was the Mubarak Solomon case that we showed you the big poster of. There was a rally. It's what happened to Mubarak Solomon, and you know it's so important to have I can pull that up now separately. That's not it.
Okay.
To have the public come out, because I believe that the authorities who investigate wrongdoing by police with regard to the issue of criminality take it a lot more serious. People are out there, whether it's a march, a rally, demonstrating for justice for that. So that was an example of that. And I think you played a video of my speech at the rally.
Yes. All right, then moving right along, you have you address school negligence case.
You want to show that clip?
Yeah, let me see if I can pull it up.
You
Can
can
you see the clip?
hold it up a little. Okay. All right. That was the case. Let me let you play it first for your viewers.
Okay. Let me bring it back. All right, so let's talk about that one. We got a list of them.
Case of bullying, and we have filed a claim against the school because there's a statute in New York called the Dignity for All Students, and that requires schools to take some specific actions against bullying in the school. We claim in this particular case that the school did not take appropriate action, not comply with the Dignity for All Students Act, which is a statute here in New York State to try to prevent bullying and at least to get reports of bullying and to require schools to take certain action when it occurs. So this is a negligence lawsuit against the school for failing to do that. So we are very aggressive in terms of filing the appropriate lawsuits when we believe statutes are not being followed by schools, in this case, the Dignity for All Students Act, which results in students being injured by bullying.
All right, so moving right along, we got attorney Sandford Rubenstein addresses homeless shelter negligence. So I'm gonna pull that up real quick.
Yeah, very interesting case. Why don't you play the clip and then I can talk about it. It's a case of food poisoning in the shelter.
All right. Give us a second. We're going to play the clip.
This public relations homeless services is not going to work. By saying those who were sickened and had food poisoning are now okay, which is untrue, is simply going to backfire on them. And to have a doctor who heads up medical services for the Department of Homeless Services say because there was no bacteria found in this food, it did not cause food poisoning, is also a public relations ploy that will not work, because the fact of the matter is this food could have been infected with toxins. It could have been a virus infected it that could have caused food poisoning. When these 4 people went to the hospital, they were all diagnosed with food poisoning.
All right, so let's talk about that.
Very interesting case. That's a case in which I was asked by some homeless residents of a homeless shelter to represent them, because they noticed that there was a package of food and the label of the food, which showed when it expired, was covered over with a new label with a phony date on it, which was later than the actual expiration. And they suspected poisoning. So we filed a claim against the city of New York for damages. Certainly, they should have been aware of the fact that this was going on, and the shelter has a responsibility to its residents not to serve them food which is expired. In this case, the food had been expired and a phony label was placed over the food. So a number of people came down with food poisoning. I represent 4 of them, and we're suing for damages, the city, because this should not have happened. It's as simple as that. Residents of a homeless shelter, residents of any shelter, residents of any facility in which food is being served should not be served food that is bad or causes food poisoning. And in this case, there was a label over the original label with a date which was totally inaccurate.
That's crazy. All right, moving right along. You represented police brutality in the subway station.
Unfortunately, in this city today, there is a divide between the police and the public, the community, that is unacceptable as well. That divide must be conquered. We must now work together to stop what's going on in this city.
All right, let's talk about that one.
That's a case in which a vendor, a seller of alleged candy at a subway station, was brutalized by the police and arrested. You see Senator Brian Benjamin to my right. That's one of the photos that's blown up in my civil rights room in my office. And what we try to do is call attention to what was going on so that those who were brutalized in the subways, while they were simply selling candy, in this case, he wasn't even selling candy. He just had a big bag of candy. So that wrong is righted. And I think we made some progress with regard to the vendors and the way they're treated by the police as a result of shining a light on that wrong.
All right. So, okay, moving right along. We'll pull up another case. This addresses police brutality once again. And let me see what this is about. All right, so let's talk about that police brutality case.
That's the Benjamin Marshall case. In that case, all charges against Benjamin Marshall were dismissed. And that case is one in which we now have a criminal investigation with regard to the actions of the police officer for punching him in the face. You know, police brutality is something no one expects to happen. And all of a sudden, they're a victim. And that's what happened here. He was victimized, and he is fully cooperating with the Brooklyn District Attorney's Office with regard to their criminal investigation of the actions of the police.
All right, so moving right along, we got a Bronx stabbing.
Well,
All right, so let's talk about that one.
It has the killing of McCree in a school classroom, a horrible tragedy. Young man, his life snuffed out. Now, what happened there was the student who stabbed and killed him, Abel Cedeno, went on trial and was convicted. Now, Abel Cedeno claimed that there was a problem with bullying. He was bullied, and as a result, he stabbed Matthew McCree. Clearly, Matthew McCree was not the bully, and that came out very strongly during the course of the criminal case. And finally, on trial, the conviction of Abel Cedeno for killing him wrongly was very serious. He was sentenced, I believe, to 14 years in jail. But again, the problem with bullying, and the family of Abel Cedeno is claiming that he snapped because he had been bullied so much, not by Matthew McCree, but by other students in the school, and that the mother had complained about it. The school did nothing. And that's not acceptable under the Dignity for All Students Act that I mentioned earlier. This was a 2-week trial that was heavily covered by the media, a killing in school. Parents send their children to school to be learn, educated, but also to be safe. Mother sent her son to school, and he didn't terrible. And we're suing the Department of Education for their failing to comply again with the Dignity for All Students Act with regard to the claim of the killer in this case, Abel Cedeno, that he was bullied and nothing was done about it. The school knew about it. His mother complained about it to the school. They didn't do what has to be done pursuant to the Dignity for All Students Act. So we're looking for damages for his wrongful death from the Department of Education. Also, the classroom was total chaos. There's video of the actual killing viral as well, which shows the teachers not doing the appropriate thing at the time that this terrible incident occurred.
Wow. They got I went to a school, I went to a play. And when I went to see the play, Mr. Rubenstein, you had to go through a metal detector, take up your belt, loop off, get everything out your pocket, your shoes. I said, man, school system got real bad, huh?
Well, that's another issue in this case, and that is even though the principal of the school requested metal detectors for the school, the Department of Education denied that request. And there had been prior incidents of weapons being brought to the school, yet the Department of Education did not put metal detectors in this school. They should have, and that's another theory of responsibility that we are looking to hold the Department of Education liable for his wrongful death. No metal detectors requested by the principal, a chaotic classroom, and the Dignity for All Students not being followed.
Wow. Okay, moving right along. We got another police brutality case, and this was in Brooklyn. Let me see what we got here.
Sandford Rubenstein, there is a new epidemic of police brutality in our city. I have filed today 5 notices of claims for damages against the NYPD and the City of New York for victims of police brutality, all of which occurred this past Saturday night going into Sunday morning. 3 at the Marcy Projects, 1 at the Bainbridge Street, and 1 at the Roosevelt Projects. All these incidents, all these occurrences were occurrences of police brutality in which citizens of this city, people who live here in Brooklyn, were brutalized by the police. 2 of them.
Let's talk about that case.
Example of a night in which there was just 2 police brutality. There's a number of locations. We represent a number of victims. And look, we look for justice. We look forward to a jury hearing the cases, watching the videos, and then making a determination with regard to what these victims are entitled to in damages. You know, the City of New York spends tens of millions of dollars to pay to the victims of police brutality damages, to which they are entitled to every penny. It would be better if that money was spent on social programs because that's probably where it should be spent. But victims need to be compensated for what happened to them, and that's what we do. We get compensation for victims, but we also try to get change so what happens to one victim doesn't happen to another. I'm so encouraged by seeing this worldwide movement against police brutality that has occurred recently. and so many marching in the streets in so many different countries. And the issue, for the first time, is really being addressed as it should be by government and on the state level. We've passed statutes here in New York State, which hopefully will be helpful. But also on a federal level, I don't think they're doing enough. One of the issues I have on a federal level is prior to Trump getting elected president, Sessions being his attorney general, we had what was called pattern investigation of the police. When there was a district in which a municipality, a city, a town, there was brutality, that was done by the Justice Department, the Civil Rights Bureau, and they would come in and bring lawsuits against the municipality, against the city, saying that there is a practice of brutality, and we want to federal appoint a monitor over the police department in order to stop it. Well, you know what happened? In more than 20 cities, the city governments entered into consent decrees with the Department of Justice for change, whether it was improved training, improved policies. Sessions, they're no longer a pattern of investigations. They don't exist. They stopped. So I think one of the things the federal government has to do is start the Justice Department again with these pattern and practice investigations. Now, what can be done if the federal government doesn't do that? Absolutely not, because the civil rights statute only allows the Justice Department to bring these lawsuits for pattern and practices of police brutality. However, if we amend the existing statute and allow private citizens to bring these lawsuits, you could have the ACL, the NAACP Legal Defense Front, going into federal court, asking a federal judge to appoint a monitor to oversee police departments in which there is a history, a pattern, a practice of brutality. That's what's needed. We need to amend the federal civil rights act so that private individuals, entities like the legal defense, resources to go against the federal government, can bring these actions against the municipalities. That's what's needed. I went to Washington to lobby that a few years ago. Unfortunately, even under a Democratic administration, but now focus on brutality worldwide. I think the federal government, the Congress, to add the ability for private citizens to bring pattern and practice lawsuits against municipalities in which there is a pattern and practice of police brutality.
Wow. Why do you think these officers just feel that they just can hurt people and and it's okay?
I think prior to this recent movement against police brutality, there was a mentality among police officers that you can do whatever you want and get away with it and not be held accountable criminally. As I've said many times, the only way we're going to stop police brutality is to hold these police officers who commit brutal acts. And I'm not saying all police officers are bad. 90% of the police officers probably are good. They want their job. But the bad apples in the barrel need to be weeded out. These bad apples are fired when they are involved in acts of police brutality. They need to be prosecuted. And in the appropriate cases, they go to jail so that the mentality of the police force will change, so that police officers realize they can't get away with doing whatever they want to innocent victims.
Correct. All right, so moving right along, we have a, let me see what we got here. Oh, wow. We got a case with the Boy Scouts of America, huh?
This is a case in which, and this is not the only case out there, in which the Boy Scouts of America have been sued for sexual wrongdoing by scoutmasters, cubmasters. In this particular case, I represent a number of brothers who allege that they were sexually abused by a scoutmaster when they were in a scout troop. We've seen the Boy Scouts go bankrupt, I believe, recently, or file for bankruptcy. There's so many lawsuits against them. And I'm hoping that as a result of all these lawsuits against the Boy Scouts, whether it's the Boy Scouts or any other community-based group that employs scoutmasters, in this case, who are engaged in activities totally inappropriate with the young, they be held accountable civilly, so that it stops, so that organizations realize that if you don't look carefully at who you hire, you don't monitor who is working for you, who is involved in interfacing with you, you will be held accountable civilly.
Wow. That's sad because, you know, I grew up as a Boy Scout, and in the Boy Scout, you know, they take you camping, and, you know, they teach you ways, you know, things that you can do, you know, with your hands and skills and unity as coming up as you know, young kids and stuff like that. And then they do this stuff behind the scenes when, you know, when the parents ain't around.
Look, I was a Boy Scout also. In fact, some of my most memorable summers spent at Tim Boy Scout camp. I was living in the projects, in Ravenswood housing projects in Queens at the time. And my mother would want me to go away to camp, and the Boy Scouts had an affordable camp. We'd go, and I loved camp, the Boy Scout camp. Fortunately, I never was approached for any kind of sexual wrongdoing by the Boy Scout leaders that were my leaders. And like I said, most Boy Scout leaders probably are good people, but it's the barrel that have to be removed, have to be screened. Also, the Boy Scouts need to screen more carefully those who are scoutmasters, cubmasters, who interface with young people. So I had wonderful times as a Boy Scout. I ended up the rank of Star Scout. So you went from to first class to Star, I think. That's as far as I never got to the ultimate rank. What was the ultimate rank, if you remember correctly? Because I forgot. It was Eagle Scout. Yes.
I had a bunch of patches, but I can't remember what they are.
I didn't know Eagle Scout. I never got the Eagle Scout.
Eagle Scout, yeah, Eagle, yeah.
I was very much lucky to be able to go away to camp and enjoy Boy Scout camp.
Yeah. Okay, so moving right along, you got so much that you've done out here in the community. You have another Bronx stabbing, right? Let me see what this is about. Another school stabbing.
That's the that was a file that was covered on a regular basis by the press. There are a number of videos. I think that may have been when there was a conviction in the case. And I said, no one's popping champagne, no one's celebrating, because you know, a number of young men's lives were ruined. One young man dead, another young man was stabbed, another young man is going to jail for 14 years. No one was popping champagne that there was a conviction, but at least the responsible person for a killing that never should have taken place was held accountable in the court.
Wow. All right. So moving right along, we got another case that you're involved with, and this is gun violence in America.
I think gun control is play it.
All right, so let's talk about that one.
Well, that was a seminar talking about gun control, importance for gun control, and the importance of getting guns off the streets. Actually, it was in the Brooklyn Borough Hall at the old Appellate Division courtroom. So I got to sit in the seat of the Appellate Division judge, which is very prestigious. And as you can see, it's quite an ornate room. It's no longer used at the Appellate courtroom, but it's one of the ceremonial rooms in Brooklyn Borough Hall. And it was quite a thrill to sit up there with the judges of the Appellate Division, which, if you want me to give you a view, a little lesson in how the courts work. You have the civil court for small damages. You have the Supreme Court, which is a trial, which is actually the lowest trial court, one of the lowest trial courts in the state. Then from Supreme Court, you go to the Appellate Division, the Appeals Court. That's where all the appeals are taken. And then ultimately the Court of Appeals, the highest court in the state of New York. So you go from the lower civil courts to the Supreme Court, where you try the significant civil cases, and the cases go on appeal from there on issues to the Appellate Division. No trials in the Appellate Division, just appeals on issues that came up during trials. And then the Court of Appeals, which doesn't hear many cases, but will ultimately make the final policy for the state of New York.
Wow. All right. So moving right along, excuse me, we have another case in which there was a 7-year-old wrongful death, something like that.
Why don't you
Yes,
play?
a 7-year-old wrongful death in NYCTA bus accident.
Yeah, another terrible tragedy. You know, it's very important that tragedy occur. Those of us who represent victims not only help the family trying to get damages for the victim, but also the victim to figure out what exactly happened. And in that case, we hired investigators to try to determine exactly what happened with the case. So yes, I represent victims, families. No one can ever replace a 7-year-old child who was killed in an accident. It's as simple as that. But that's what we do, and we try to get change. So not only do we try to get compensation for victims, we try to get change that happens to one victim doesn't happen to another. That's the title of a book I wrote, as a matter of fact. Titled The Outrageous Rubenstein, but it's how a media-savvy trial lawyer fights for justice and change. And that's what we do. We fight to get damages for victims, as well as to get change so what happens to one victim doesn't happen to another.
Do you have one of the copies of your book around you, in front of you?
I'll get one. Give me a moment.
We can show it to the audience. All right, so now we got another case with the New York City Department of Education. Let's pull that one up. So what was that all about?
Another case about negligent supervision in the schools, where teachers were alleging were negligent in the way they supervised the classroom, resulting in a child injured. So if I may just diverse a second, here's a copy of my book, The Outrageous.
Oh, there you go.
Our
Raise
immediate
it up a little bit.
in front of a whole bank of cameras, and that was at the verdict in the Louima case, the police torture trial of an officer who tortured Abner Louima in a police precinct here in Brooklyn. That officer is still in jail. Justin Volpe received a 30-year sentence for what he did, and he remains in jail to this day. So we believe it's very important that when we uncover wrongs that occur, not only do we get civil damages, but we also encourage victims to cooperate with prosecutors so that justice is ultimately done and those who committed wrongful acts, criminal acts, are held criminally accountable.
Right. All right. Then we have another case where you address assault on a school bus case, something like that.
Another case about
You saw it?
they want
On the way to school in the morning on a school bus, a yellow school bus. The attendant on the school bus, whose responsibility is to watch out for these children, is caught on camera assaulting this child.
Wow.
Caught by another attendant on the bus there with one other student, physically challenged child.
Wow. What was that case about?
Yeah, this demonstrates how good people can make a difference. There was a school attendant, a bus attendant on the bus who saw another attendant committing an assault on a young student. She videotaped it. So we can't say that videos of the truth. We can't say what happened before cell phones came into existence, because the best weapon that victims have today, cell phone. I don't mean weapon in terms of using it as a weapon. I mean, it demonstrates wrongdoing. And I think for the invention of the cell phone and the cell phone, because we would not have uncovered so many acts of police brutality, so many acts of wrongdoing, if it were not for cell phones. And I think that it's an amazing time to live when you know that you can. And by the way, the state of New York recently passed, Assemblyman Nick Perry sponsored legislation which codifies, makes it a statute that people have every right to film the police and what they're doing. And it even gives damages for police who try to stop it. So the public film, it always had that. Now it's been codified in a statute with damages when there is an attempt to stop it by police. So the cell phone, the intention to get the truth out there as to what happened in so many different cases.
Wow, that's big. Because a lot of times when somebody pulls a cell phone out, the officer tries to take the cell phone or block the cell phone and stuff like that because they don't want to be filmed.
Well, there now is a statute in the state of New York which makes that illegal. And it's legal to take the video. It's legal to record. Legal. And that has now been placed in statute. I'd like to thank again Assemblyman Perry for getting that through the legislature. And that was a whole package of legislative changes. 50A, which is the ability to get disciplinary records of police officers, now codified in law. We can get those. Other aspects of the governor's package on police reform. One came out of the Kearse case, a case in which a man did not get medical attention in the back of a police car, happened upstate New York. He kept on saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. The police officer was not even listening to him. And in this case, ultimately, he died. And the state of New York passed the Kearse Act, which now requires police to victims.
Let me ask you a question. How does one of us get information on all these little laws that's passed and stuff like that? Because it's not public information.
Well, I think one of the things you could do is contact your local assemblyman, your local state senator, and they certainly can get you the actual statutes or even the governor's office. And they will be able to provide a summary of all the new laws that have been passed very recently in the state. And also Congress is now struggling to try to pass some kind of serious, comprehensive police brutality reform. I said earlier, they need to consider making the ability to file a pattern and practice lawsuit where there is a pattern and practice of police brutality in a community, in a municipality, to be able to bring that lawsuit to the government, who is the only one that has the right to bring it, the Civil Rights Bureau of the United States Justice Department, but to give individual citizens the right to bring these lawsuits where there is a pattern and practice of brutality. That's something that's very important. And I'm hoping that will be included in any package that's passed by Congress, signed by the president. We need the right to have individual citizens bring pattern and practice lawsuits for a federal judge to appoint a monitor to oversee police departments in which there is a pattern of brutality. But of course, nothing will replace police officers who commit brutal acts against citizens, who commit criminal acts against innocent victims.
But it's been going on for a long time. Thank God for the cell phone, Mr. Rubenstein.
I totally agree. If anything, pictures of the truth, which emerged time and time again, evidence that demonstrates, unfortunately, police brutality in just too many cases in the past. Let's hope that with this new movement against police brutality and the changes that are going to be put in statutes, that'll make a difference. We hope so.
Right. So now we got another case right here. I think says police brutality in the Brooklyn subway station. You got the mask on this one. This must have just happened.
I guess that's that's relatively recent. We can see which cases.
All right. So what happened with that?
Well, I'm not wearing a mask now because I'm the only one in this room, and you're in a different location. But
Yes,
again, real problem in the subways with police brutality, people being victimized. And in that case, the victim was still in the hospital when we did the police station. That was a case that I believe ended the enforcement by police of the social distancing and requirement to wear face masks. That's a case in which a young woman, 22 years old, with a 5-year-old child, was at the Barclays train station. There was an issue with her having her face mask on. It ended up, she got brutally thrown to the ground. Her 5-year-old child saw all this, and then they took her away with the 5-year-old child not even knowing what was going to happen to him. It was a terrible example
Wow.
of police misconduct. In fact, after that occurred, the mayor directed the police department no longer to be involved in the enforcement of social distancing or mask wearing. Now, I'm not encouraging the public not to wear masks. I think you should wear masks. I think you should show social distance. This virus has not left us. It's still around, even though we're getting back to normal to some degree. I think that's important. But what happened was in their enforcement, in fact, many say that the enforcement was racially motivated, because when you did the numbers, 92% of all the arrests that were involved with social distance, not wearing a mask, were in black and brown neighborhoods. This shows that it almost became the new stop and frisk, which was declared unconstitutional by a federal judge. Many believe that this was the new stop and frisk. So after the Kalima Rozier case, which we saw earlier, the one in the Berkeley subway station, the mayor stopped the police from enforcing social distancing, and which I think was a step in the right direction. The police never should have been involved, and unfortunately, it became an opportunity for the police, which really, based on the statistics, was racist, to give 92% of the summonses and 92% arrests in black and brown communities. This was not appropriate, and change, I think, because of the publicity, that these cases where a young mother with a 5-year-old child is thrown to the ground, a 5-year-old child now fearing for their own safety, it demonstrated how much of a mistake it was to have the police involved in this. The mayor directed the police no longer to be involved. So we did get change, and I think it demonstrates that protesting, marching, shining a light on wrongdoing is very helpful.
So before we go, right, let me ask you a question. So do you feel that the case with George Floyd is like going to be the turning point of a better response from the police force, and also the exposure as it's put on the world?
Well, I'm hopeful that the killing of George Floyd will lead to an end to police brutality. You know, when I went to Minneapolis with a delegation led by Reverend McCall, with the brother of George Floyd, who lives here in Brooklyn, and we went to the scene of where George Floyd lost his life and his brother took a knee, and it was a photo seen worldwide. So I'm hopeful that as a result of this tragedy will change. So this terrible, terrible scourge of police brutality will come to an end.
Wow. All right, so how can people get in touch with you if they need your services and stuff like that?
1-800, let me give it toll free, 1-800-447-HURT. That's 1-800-447-HURT. As I say on the commercial, call now.
Mr. Rubenstein, it was a pleasure talking to you. I know you're a busy man, and thank you for taking our time on your busy schedule.
Always a pleasure to speak with you, because when I'm speaking with you, I'm speaking to the community, and I think that's something I enjoy doing. So thank you again.
Thank you again, and I'll be in touch with you soon.
Great.
Have a great day. Yes, sir. All right.